beautiful, isn't it, our lake? I'm sure many of us have lots of positive images of the lake from maybe a beautiful sunset or a moonrise or maybe sailboat or catching a big lake trout. But we also have a lot of concerns about the lake as well. We maybe consider how much mercury might be in that trout, or whether that algal bloom is harmful, or whether that thing that's on the propeller is an invasive species. Well, we're not alone in our concern and our desire to have a beautiful freshwater system. The EPA estimates that we have something like 50% of our natural water bodies that are impacted just by nutrients, let alone heavy metals, let alone invasive species. 50%, it's a pretty big number. When I'm talking about nutrients, of course, I'm talking about things like nitrogen and phosphorus. In fact, if we consider what's going on just on a sediment grain, it's pretty complex. If we're trying to figure out how to predict whether an algal bloom is going to be harmful or not, we have to consider things like, well, what are the bacteria on or near that piece of sediment doing to that phosphorus? Or what are the metals doing that encourage the phosphorus to be released or to stick to the sediment particle? Or what about the types of species of phosphorus compounds that we have present in the system? And so on and so forth. It's a very complex system involving biological, chemical, and physical processes. If we scale up to a watershed, it looks different, but it's still just as complex in terms of trying to predict what's happening on the field or watershed scale and how that lends itself to creating an algal bloom that may be harmful. Well, who do we expect to generate solutions to these problems? Probably the engineers and scientists that shoot golf balls into things in the Gulf. We're also concerned about other things that may impact our lake. I want to make a little plug here for microbes. They tend to be, not treated terribly well by the media. On the whole, microorganisms are wonderful things. They're usually benign or terribly helpful, but sometimes they can be pathogenic, and so we are concerned about them. And scientists and engineers take the time to look at them on a very fundamental level, kind of like that sediment grain. We wonder and we ask questions that try and decide whether they're going to stick to that grain or whether they're going to be released and become a part of us in some way that we don't like. We also try and look at them from a much more global point of view and consider how they get from the farmland or the wastewater treatment plant or the front lawn where somebody hasn't picked up after their dog, for example, and whether or not those pathogens make their way down into the water and cause a problem for those of us who like to recreate there. Again, in this complex system involving chemical, physical, and biological processes, we expect our scientists and engineers to solve these problems, right? It's what they're there for, it's what we pay them for. But I propose that we all need to know some level of science and engineering and not be afraid of it, so that when we spend our tax dollars and we have expectations for those tax dollars, that we make them realistic. We can't expect scientists and engineers to solve these problems in the way that they do in the movies because they're incredibly complex. So we shouldn't all be complacent and say that it's cool to think that math is too hard or chemistry's for geeks. It may be hard, and maybe the people that do them now are kind of geeky, but if we are to understand our world and to solve these problems, then perhaps we should give science and engineering a little bit of a fairer frame of mind, a more pleasant place for young people to go to. And so I say that even though all of us here may not want to go back to school because we don't have the luxury of time, or perhaps we don't want to spend time learning about science and engineering, that we should encourage those people who are coming along behind us, those who we're preparing the earth for, right, to actually go into something that solves the problems. We can all pontificate and think about the types of things that we want people to do, but if we don't have the engineers and scientists to do that, well, we're in trouble, right? And I don't think we have the luxury of just waiting. Thank you.